Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started for the afternoon part of the Rec Sec track, and the first thing that we're gonna do is kind of revisit the morning session, and then if you had any questions that you wanted us to hit on again, we can do that. So you can type in the chat box if there's questions that come to mind that you'd like us to hit. We have a couple that we just pulled from your chat earlier, but for this next 80 minutes or so, Robbie and I will be live, so we can kind of address questions as they're coming in. So make sure you're still utilizing the chat feature. You also have different files in your resources tab for this session that might be different from the last one, so check that out as well. But we'll give it another couple, because I think we're almost to where we were at before with numbers. Okay. So again, if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat there. But some things that came up during the last discussion that we just wanted to touch on a little bit before we get started and go into the content for the afternoon. Internal communications. So I know somebody had mentioned earlier that there were discussions that were happening about politics or COVID or other things. So I guess what kind of communications are you all using? I'm 31 now, so I'm a little out of the game of what kind of communications there are. I know GroupMe used to be cool. Do people still use GroupMe? Do you use Facebook? Are there other things? Do you have No Ways, Slack? Okay, I remember Slack. Discord.
GroupMe. Yeah, I think GroupMe is pretty typical for most of the groups that at least I work with. I see GroupMe a lot. I've been seeing Discord jump up, especially since COVID started. That's really cool to see that being utilized as well.
Okay.
But yeah, seeing a lot of GroupMes and Slacks and Snapchat.
I thought that Discord was only for gaming at first. That's how out of it I am, but it does have a lot of functions. Does anybody have feedback as to which one that they like? If you're using one, you think it works really well for you, you're able to manage it, people are actually participating. So Brad says they use GroupMe and Snapchat.
Zach Ecker uses Band. Band's a really good one.
Okay.
Built-in calendar, exactly.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think for the brothers, one of the big reasons that we talk about internal communication, and I notice a lot of you are saying in your messages, like you have like professional side and then you have like a kind of a BS or just like a fun side. That's really important to like stress that difference between the two. With GroupMe, obviously things can kind of get boggled down really quickly. Things, disappear, kind of like our chat feature where it's just cycling up, and I can miss something. That's a big thing for you guys, is to make sure if you are having different chats, like establish one as the official chapter chat. That way you guys are better able to set standards for that chat of like, hey, this chat is only meant for announcements. This chat's only meant for chapter discussions, or hey, this is an important notice chat. And then you can have your fun chats on the side, your sports chat, your gaming chat, stuff like that. Band is a really great tool. I really like the fact that somebody mentioned, you have a calendar. You have calendars that can sync with your Google calendars or your school calendars or even your chapter calendars. Those are all really big things to have. But at the end of the day, internal communication falls to you guys as recording secretaries. And it's so important for you to set that standard from day one of the semester, day one of your term, whatever that looks like, and say, listen, guys, this is the chat for this. This is the chat for this. This is the chat for this. And if guys don't want to be a part of, the extra chats, they don't have to be. Don't force anybody to be in one of those informal chats that they don't want to be in. But as far as like the formalized chats, like your important updates and chapter need specifically stuff, everyone needs to be in that, and that should not be muted for anybody. I also believe if you guys utilize LegFi or MegaFi, There's a feature on there that you can send out formalized emails to everybody. So that's something else you can look at. I know one of the chapters I work with, WPI, they have officer-specific emails, and the recording secretary can send out stuff to the entire chapter with that email specifically. So there's tons of options out there for internal communication. The big thing is just setting those boundaries as often as you can. Duke, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I froze again, so it closed me out and brought me back. I do not.
Cool. Yeah, I've seen a lot of guys talk about Snapchat too. Snapchat, I think, is really awesome, and it can be really beneficial to like brotherhood and to chapters staying in contact with each other, especially during COVID. I would definitely keep that as more of a social and informal group rather than making it more formalized. The other big thing is making sure that you're paying attention to guys and what they have access to, because not everybody might have access to a Snapchat. Some guys might not have access to specific group. GroupMe is a really good one because you don't have to be utilizing the app necessarily. I believe they could have changed it, but when I was an undergrad in 2017, you were able to just sign up with your phone number, and I didn't have to have the app. I could have just texted from my phone. So if I had a flip phone, or if someone maybe doesn't have an iPhone or doesn't have the capacity to download the app, they can still communicate that way. So yeah, Snapchat is the constantly being for informal, and I agree with that 100%. We wanted to go a little more in depth with some of the topics that we talked about earlier, JBoard being one of them. JBoard, I know somebody asked earlier on, I think it was the recording secretary from Old Dominion, asked to clarify a little bit on what I meant by keeping things internalized when it comes to JBoard. The big thing with that is anything that happens within a JBoard trial or anything like that, that should be privatized and kept to the people who are involved. So JBoard, the accused brother, witnesses, cabinet graduate advisor who's there, that should be all kept internally and private from the chapter overall, because that's the way it's meant to be. Now, if somebody disagrees and they would like to make it a chapter-wide known thing, that's the prerogative of that brother. He can choose to appeal something to the chapter, and then the chapter can take a vote on it. So I hope that answers your question. If not, drop it in the chat and let me know. But I kind of wanted to pose a question to the entire group. What are some things, JBoard or accountability-wise, that you guys have seen as far as like best practices? And I'll give you guys a couple seconds to type something in.
I'm still here, Robbie. I'm going to try doing it without video to see if it keeps me on.
While you guys are talking and hopefully putting some stuff in the chat feature, yep, having JBoard consisting of members of various college classes, that's a really good one. You don't want a bunch of older guys, you don't want a bunch of young guys, you want a good mix. If you look at our stuff on the website, our resources, and I believe we have them in the files tab as well for the JBoard manual, guide to disciplining brothers, that kind of stuff. The big thing is you want at least 1 to 2, depending on the size of your chapter, obviously, or your colony, to have at least 1 to 2 guys from every class. That could be grade class, freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors. It could be the pledge class. Those are really good things to have. Having a mix of brothers, that's always a good one. Staying in touch or reviewing what their obligations are. Communication is big. I think communication is big at any point in the chapter. That's part of being in a fraternity, is communication, and communication. So it's really good to see that you guys are talking about that. Yeah, consistent punishment so nobody gets singled out. Well-versed in chapter principles. Holding each other accountable regarding situation and following up after the fact, being consistent and firm on decisions. Andrew, what do you mean? How do you guys contribute since you're not actual voting members? Do you not allow your JBoard to vote in like normal operations, or are you just talking specifically in judicial stuff? You guys, so J board doesn't vote on rulings at all. Who does vote on the rulings? Oh, RecSec doesn't. Yeah. So with that, RecSecs are meant to cast that deciding vote almost. So if you guys have an even number of brothers and you have kind of like I bring it up as almost like a Supreme Court hearing. If for whatever reason you guys are locked, let's say you have 6 guys on the J board, 3 say yes, 3 say no, the recording secretary then can cast that deciding vote between the two. But most of the time, you don't really need to. Most of the time, from my experience with most situations, the J board is on the same page, which is really good. The time that I see a lot of debate and discussion and voting is when it comes to punishments. And the accountability side is something that I want to hit on too. You definitely want to make sure you guys have stuff written in your bylaws that gives the J board ability to decide the punishments, because you don't want just a blanketed punishment for every little thing, because not everybody is going to agree or be like used for that punishment. Maybe one of your punishments is, hey, Robbie, you didn't go to X philanthropy event or X recruitment event that was required. You can't go to a social event this semester, or you can't go to 2 social events. Maybe I don't go to social events anyways. That's not really gonna like tell me and like hold me accountable, because okay, cool. That's my punishment. I don't really care. I don't go to socials anyways. I'll just keep doing it. But maybe it's something like, hey, you know, you didn't go to this recruitment event, and you guys know that I'm not the biggest fan of like service. Hey, Robbie, we're gonna, you know, give you 5 more hours of service that you need to do this semester. That's gonna hold me accountable, and that's gonna really make me think of, am I gonna make the same mistake again? So you want to have the J board be flexible enough to determine different kinds of punishments, the same way that you guys incentivize people within your chapter. You incentivize ways for scholarship and getting and doing things. And the same way for accountability is very individualized. So giving them the tools as the J board to make those decisions is perfect. And again, at the end of the day, if you as a recording secretary are sitting there and you don't think it's the right punishment, or they're not going down the right path, you can have the ability to speak up and say that. And if the brother doesn't agree with it, then they can always appeal to the cabinet. They can always appeal to the chapter. But again, you're running the idea of airing out your dirty laundry, like I said in the last video, where some things guys might not want to get out to the chapter. They want to keep it private as much as they can. And if they do that, you guys definitely should try to keep that as close to the vest as possible, where they're like, hey, I don't agree with my punishment, but I'm not comfortable going to the chapter. Maybe that's where you talk about what the issue is and maybe bring it up to a cabinet and see if they're willing to go to a cabinet for an appeal instead. Any other questions as far as J board accountability? Anyone else have any ideas for either of those? John, I like how you said, you know, tailor the punishments to each situation. That's always really important. Matt, exactly. Courage part comes into a play. Being those courageous leaders, your J board is that on a consistent basis. Another thing I want to say quickly on the J board, a lot of chapters, I mentioned it in the video, but a lot of chapters utilize it as just this big overpowering thing where if you're going to J board, you're in a lot of trouble. I really encourage you guys to push that narrative away. J board should be handling everything from the smallest incident all the way up to the biggest incident, because I don't want guys to feel scared to go to a J board. You probably hear it a lot with sororities, especially where they talk about, oh, I'm going to standards, like it's such a scary thing. Like that's not what our J board is meant for. Our J board is meant to handle any instances where a bylaw was broken. And it happens. Guys make mistakes. We all do. But utilize it for how you can, where it's encouraging of like you're being held accountable to your standard, but you're not going to get kicked out over this. And like make it very clear to guys, like if it's something small, like they shouldn't be freaking out about it. Obviously with those bigger issues, you know, it's being mindful of what the situation calls for. Peter, for J-board discipline, do you think it's better to increase brothers' responsibilities or reduce privileges or a combination? Yeah, I agree with what people are talking about. It kind of depends on what the nature of the offense is and what happened. Also depends on your brotherhood and the relationship that everybody has within the chapter, because again, it's what's going to hold that brother most accountable. If they don't really take advantages of the privileges in the chapter anyways, taking away a privilege might not be effective for them, but maybe adding on to what their responsibilities are, that might make them be held accountable that way. Duke, did you have anything additional that you wanted to talk about if you're still here? Yeah, Ian, I agree. Education of the new members, that's a great start because those guys are going to be leaders within the next 2 to 4 years. So definitely the better understanding that they have of it, it might not be an immediate thing. You guys might not see it in your time as a recording secretary, but within the next few years, there will be people who understand what the J-board's meant for. Ben, to answer your question, can there be a specific punishment for breaking a specific bylaw? If so, should that be added into the bylaw? Absolutely. Again, I would try to not restrict your J-board and what they're able to do, because that really ties their hands. And that can be a really difficult situation where if there's like a mitigating circumstance and the J-board's like, well, I really wish I could do something different, but the bylaw says I have to do this. That can be really restrictive and really unfortunate in certain situations. But if you wanted to put a specific bylaw for a specific punishment for a specific bylaw, just make sure it's attached to the bylaws. That way you can work with it. What about holding J-board with no intention of punitive action? The way that I would go on with that, Robert, I guess to clarify, I'm guessing that you're talking about more of just like a trial to like have a discussion and maybe it's like a warning. J-board has the ability to do that if it's written that way in your bylaws. The biggest thing that you guys should take away from this conversation is it constantly goes back to what your bylaws state. Your bylaws are the rules and the regulations that you have to follow, and the J-board has to follow what's outlined for them. If you make it very easy to follow, you make it very difficult and tie their hands, that's all up to what the bylaws state. And that's something that you guys might want to look at when you go back to your chapters this semester and see what kind of rules and policies are in place for that. Additionally, how can you make the brother in question do the punishment? That one specifically, it's just following up. It's the accountability side again. If they choose to ignore you and not follow up on their punishment, they go back to J-board, and then it's a more serious sanction. Yeah, we have trouble with brothers blowing off J-boards. Exactly. I would just continuously hold them accountable and make sure that those brothers understand if you don't complete X task or this thing by this time, you're going to go back to J-board, and it's going to be a more serious punishment. And at the end of the day, you can always revert back to the hardest thing that a chapter can do, I think, is put somebody on denial of chapter privileges. But if a brother consistently ignores what J-board says and they just continuously keep going back to J-board for the same thing, different reasons, you can go all the way up to denial of chapter privileges, is where they pay to be a brother, but they can't do anything as a brother, which can be really difficult and kind of upsetting. But that's something I hope you guys never have to deal with, but if it gets to that point, that's an option that you have.
Hey, Robbie, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thanks for being a rock star. Sorry that I'm like 100 years old and I can't get things to work over here.
No worries.
So where are we?
We're still talking about J-board stuff. I'm kind of just going through the questions that I'm seeing in chat. Would you recommend having chapter advisors help write bylaws to close possible loopholes? Andrew, I think if you include your PL, a BCA member, whoever you choose, maybe somebody who's like in law, or understands like public policy or anything like that, they could be really great additions to help that committee get stronger and find those loopholes. Again, it's the decision of the chapter because the chapter is going to be the ones voting on it, but I would seek the help if people are willing to give it to you. Brad, our chapter uses JBoard when something really bad happens, but for little things, the cabinet normally reaches out, talks to the brother. Is that effective? It can be and it can't be at the same time. It really depends on ultimately what your brotherhood looks like. I would always encourage, like I said, having JBoard handle all those issues. If it's more of like just two brothers beefing with one another, maybe have a sit down with somebody from cabinet and talk to them and be like, hey, can we just resolve this? But if it's like something that breaks the bylaw itself, they need to go to a JBoard. Nick, yeah, social probation until punishment's carried out. If social probation works, that's a really great addition to have. For anyone that makes below the grade requirement in our chapter and has met with the JBoard, the only punishment that we have in the bylaws right now is social probation. What are other punishments that we could put in place that would be beneficial? Yeah, honestly, guys, most of you probably will agree social probation works for most of your issues and most of the brothers within your chapter. Again, it's always good to have just those other options. In our files tab, I believe we should have it, Guide for Discipline of Brothers 2019. If you guys pull that up at some point, that's going to be a real big help for you all because it has a ton of different things that you can utilize. I'm pulling it up right now, and I can kind of talk to you guys and give you some examples. So this is like specifically for what you can per the laws. So revocation of pledgeship, monetary penalty of 10% or less, a fine, removal from office, denial of chapter privileges. That's the highest that you guys can go. There's other ways. You just have to kind of be creative for it. But specifically when we're talking about like grade requirements or stuff like that, I would work to improve your scholarship plan and have a set standard of where people fall based on their GPA. And that could be study hours. That could be you have to meet with your advisor at least once a month or once a semester. It can be, yeah, you know, Josh is talking about other punishments. It could be sober brother requirements. You know, it can be, I try to avoid fines as much as I'm able to. So I would encourage you guys to kind of ignore that as well. But just think outside the box, honestly. But like accountability and punishments, like I don't really even like the term punishment. Accountability measure. Think of what that guy doesn't like to do in the chapter. What's something that he actively tries to avoid being a part of, and use that. That's a great motivator at the end of the day, or just improve your incentives to keep guys on the good track.
I think we're getting some good questions, Robbie, but let's go ahead and move along, and then we can come back to these at the end, guys. Sorry about the difficulties on my end, but I think I have everything good so we can try to get started. So did you talk about chapter rosters? Did you touch on that again at all?
No, not yet. You want to hit on that?
Okay. So just to kind of follow up on the discussion about chapter rosters in your last session, that is something that your field secretary is going to work with cabinet on when you have your first cabinet meetings, which I think are going to be happening next week. So you could talk a little bit more about that. I know you all were having some questions pop up when we were talking about that in the pre-recorded stuff. Yeah. You guys are lucky as RecSec. The whole money collection thing's really more of a treasurer issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just dropped it in the chat. If we don't have time to get back to the accountability side with like bylaws and how it relates to like finances, again, finances are mainly a treasurer thing. The only thing that really falls into you with that is just the bylaw side of it. Definitely shoot me a message on here on the website, or we'll reconnect later on. And your field secretaries are also really good resources for it as well. So moving forward, talk about suggested committees overseen, and I'll let Duke kind of talk about that.
Yeah, and we love that you guys are talking and having some conversations. I know it's a bit awkward that that's our real only way to communicate here. So keep it up, definitely. But just so we can kind of stay on task. But to start it off with, these are some of the committees that you would normally be overseeing in your role as recording secretary. So if you look at the chapter nuts and bolts, which is in the files tab, and it breaks down your position, these are the groups that you would work with a lot. So the first one, recruitment. Hopefully you know what the recruitment chairman does in their committee. So the recording secretary would usually oversee that scholarship. So making sure that you have a scholarship chairman and committee, at least a scholarship chairman, and then having some sort of scholarship plan that you use. I know some of you all were talking about GPA requirements and things along those lines. So that's when the scholarship chairman and the scholarship plan could really come into use. Risk management, you had a whole section that talked about risk management. So you know how important that is, and you can work closely with the risk management chairman to make sure that everybody is well versed in the risk management policy and that you all try your best to abide by it. J-board, we've hit on J-board quite a bit, had some further discussions about it, and we could touch on it again towards the end when we get there. And then bylaws, it's very important that your chapter has its own set of bylaws that was discussed earlier on. So making sure that you all have some, you know where they are. And if not, there's some resources available to help you create some of your own. So those are our recommended. Every chapter is going to be a little bit different with what each cabinet officer oversees when it comes to committee chairman, but that's just kind of the recommended one just because it makes the most sense because it aligns a lot with your position. So any questions about kind of those committee chairmen and why you would work with them, or at your chapter, you work with a different committee chairman and you think it works well, but maybe it's not one of these recommended ones? I need to start doing better things so I can get more recognition. You guys are really talking up Robbie. J-board, risk, scholarship, cool, James. We need that for you all. Thank you, Matt. I needed that, especially after stressing out about not being able to get this to work. Thanks, Ian. I feel like one of those people that's like on Twitch and they play video games and they're responding to people. Technology does suck, Peter, you're right. Okay, so it seems like we're pretty good there. Public relations chair, that's interesting, Jake. Usually that would be one that works with the core sec.
Yeah, he says that'll be under myself and the core sec. So it looks like they're tag teaming that as well.
Oh, work with both of them. Okay, that's cool.
Cameron's talking about risk manager, scholarship, service, J-board. Yeah. I've had issues.
Yeah,
sorry, dude, go ahead.
Yeah, for the enforcing accountability, that's where judicial board, again, can come in really handy. And we talked about it earlier, but it seems like groups, either they don't have a judicial board that they use at all, or they have one that they use too much. So finding a way that you're utilizing it, you're holding brothers accountable. Other brothers are seeing that brothers are being held accountable, and then they're more inclined to follow rules. So that's why the J-board is so important. And there's some useful resources in the files tab there. And if anybody has like a really good judicial board that their chapter utilizes, it might be good to try to connect with them as well. We can go ahead and move to the next slide, Robbie.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, so this is committee chairman contracts. If people in the chat use this already, definitely let me know before I dive deep into it. But this is something that I really enjoy, and I think this is another great way to hold your committee chairman accountable across the board. So committee chairman contracts, these are things that should be done within the first 2 weeks of a semester. They're individual contracts with each chairman, and they can be done by any of the cabinet officers overseeing the position. The reason that we talk about it with you guys as recording secretaries is you're kind of the ones creating the template for this. So things that you should put underneath it is list of requirements they need to do in that semester. Attend a transition meeting with your predecessor. Recruit a committee of brothers to assist you. Schedule committee meetings at least once a month. Report to your overseeing officer at least once a month. Submit your committee report before the weekly meeting. Obviously, not every one of these things is going to be done every semester. Not every semester you're going to have to do a transition meeting where you have to attend it. You might be hosting one semester and then attending it the next, which will kind of take me into my next slide, which if you guys need me to go back, just drop in the chat, I'll go back. More than happy to do that. But the next one is create a set of goals and plans to reach them. Post all your planned events to the chapter calendar. Agree upon a budget for your committee with the treasurer. Report any expenses to the treasurer and keep an accurate record for yourself. And then conduct a transition meeting with your successor. At the end of the day, I mean, these are one-pager things. I think at the bottom of it, understand, you should have a statement of understanding where it's like, I understand accountability to the cabinet and chapter for the above items, and it's essentially covering you guys. If they don't accomplish it, they have potential to be removed, and then they sign and date it at the bottom. Does anyone have any specific questions or anything with the committee chairman contracts? Or anything that you guys would like me to go more in depth with or kind of explain? And we do have it in our files folder. It's labeled as committee chair contract. That's a really good template to utilize. But again, I would encourage you to meet with the entire cabinet and kind of create a list of requirements that you guys specifically want for each of your chairmen to have.
To go back for a second, Robbie,
Yeah.
I saw that somebody asked in the chat, they said they have an involvement chair and they were asking what kind of things that they can do. Is that like a campus involvement? Is what you're talking about? Who was it? Nick?
Nick, yeah.
Because what I've seen with groups is like having some sort of campus involvement chairman. So just kind of working with the university to figure out what kind of programs that they have going on that you can participate in. It's kind of like doing what the social chairman would do with sororities, but for the university and taking advantage of the different resources that they're offering. And you could always partner with social or philanthropy, community service type stuff. I don't know if any other chapters have a campus involvement chair that they do anything a little bit different. Sure, Nick. Sorry, Robbie.
No, that's great. I'm glad that we caught the question. I'm really happy with all the engagement that we're seeing in our chat. That was something I know that I was kind of concerned with. So definitely shout out to everybody who's talking in the chat. That's really awesome to see.
Yeah, it'd be real awkward with us just staring at each other.
For sure. PR chair also does campus involvement. Yeah, and when we talk through this, you guys are gonna notice a lot of chapters either have similar things or they've combined chairmen together because it works best for their chapter. So not every chapter is exactly alike, which is kind of cool. Campus involvement.
Yeah, and
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, depending on size, like if you're a smaller chapter, you might have to kind of double up in some of the responsibilities. If you're larger and you're trying to find more ways to get people involved, there's definitely some good ideas popping up in the chat of different chairmen that you might be able to utilize if you're not already.
Yeah. Hey, Brad, we don't utilize any contracts when we assign committee heads, but when we run into a problem about someone doing that is expected of them, we talk to them and normally replace them with someone else in the committee. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like the next step. And this is just an added measure for that accountability. This is something that you can pull out and show that chairman when he, starts, potentially getting upset or being like, why are you talking to me? Like, I didn't tell you exactly what I was supposed to do. Like, I had a bad transition. And that, that a lot of times that people can utilize pretty much any excuse in the book. This is a contract that you can pull out and say, hey, look, you agreed to these terms to be in this role. You haven't accomplished them. This is your first warning. And then you can kind of continue on from there. And if ultimately it leads to removal, I highly encourage you guys as recording secretaries and the cabinets to go with somebody with already in that committee rather than appointing somebody completely different.
easier to delegate responsibilities within committees via contracts. Yep.
Exactly. Anything else for committee chairman contracts before we move on?
I really wish it had everybody's chapter by their name
Yeah.
in the chat. I think that's helpful.
All right. Well, we'll move on to committee chairman items.
Okay, so kind of expectations and goals for the upcoming semester. So as a cabinet officer and kind of being in charge of a few of these committees, it's worth your while to have some sort of meeting or expectations discussion, goal setting session with those cabinet officers or those committee chairmen, whether it's one-on-one or it's in a group setting, just to make sure you all understand what's expected of one another. And you're just there to serve as another accountability checkpoint to make sure that things are happening that fall under those different areas. SMART goals. Hopefully you all know what a SMART goal is. We were going to add a slide about what it is, but I think by now everybody knows what a SMART goal is. So just making sure that you're following that kind of outline when you're coming up with your goals. Don't just pick outrageous things that are just never going to happen. So make sure you're using the SMART. What do you want to accomplish? It seems like, especially when you come into a spring semester, that's usually when all of the positions are switching over. So the person that is in that new role probably had something that they either liked or didn't like about the last person that did it, or they have a new idea that they want to try out. So just making sure that everybody has a idea of what they're trying to get out of that. That's a good point, Andrew. If you can have a discussion with your BCA, so BCA is Board of Chapter or Colony Advisors. So if you have graduate brothers that are working with you, they can be a great resource too to utilize. Thanks for pointing that out. Committee chair reports. So you can come up with some sort of outline of what you want your committees to report to you on a weekly, bi-weekly, or whatever sort of schedule you would like them to do that. Again, it's another accountability aspect to put in there. That way they can let you know what's going on, what kind of things have been accomplished, what still needs to happen, so that you're on the same page. So it's just another accountability tool that you can utilize. Holding committee chairman accountable. When we first sent this into Lauren, who's our director of education, she said that we could spend the whole session just talking about this. So we're going to try not to do that, but holding committee chairman accountable. Does anybody have suggestions of things, since you're new to cabinet for the most part, either when you were a chairman and the cabinet officer you worked with did, or if you have been in the role in the past, things that you've utilized that you thought worked really well to hold committee chairman accountable? Anybody have thoughts or ideas there?
Yeah, and while you guys are doing that, something else I want to touch on just with the committee chairman reports. This is a real good way for you guys to see if these groups are being effective, like if that committee is really effective in your chapter, or if they're kind of fallen to the wayside. A lot of our chapters have smaller like chairs that, you know, like your t-shirt chairman. Some have like a racquetball chairman or a basketball team chairman, and sometimes things progress and you don't need those anymore. And if they can't accomplish their goals, or if you guys see that, you know, it can be moved into another another committee position already, this is your ability to do that, and it gives you evidence for that. So it's really important to see at the end of the semester, our chairman actually doing what they're supposed to be doing or not.
Exactly. And Andrew is killing it with his comments in here. Having one-on-one conversations with your chairman that you're working with versus calling them out in the middle of a chapter, that never goes well. If you just make them feel bad about themselves, you're probably not going to have a very good working relationship if you do something like that. So utilizing one-on-one conversation, giving recognition when committee performs well. That's definitely
recognition.
It's a huge one.
It's huge.
I think you all were talking about in the chat box earlier of using incentives instead of punishments across the board is going to work better because people are going to respond better to those kind of things. So making sure you're using your chapter announcements to shout out good things that are happening for your committee heads.
Something that I really like is the planning on having chair meetings at least once a week or bi-weekly. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about the same exact thing, but one of my chapters, Quinnipiac, that I got to visit last year, I actually got to sit in, and they have a meeting once a week or it's once every other week, up to once a month, where all the chairmen and cabinet meet before a chapter meeting. And they talk about everything that's going on. And I've seen that be really, really effective, and making sure everyone's on the same page, because there's times where two people are trying to do an event the same day at the same time, and they realize that then and there rather than too little too late. So it's really cool to see that. Voicing the importance of accountability, that accountability is a huge thing.
Any other thoughts from the group about committee chairmen holding them accountable or utilizing some sort of reporting structure that you have seen or dealt with that you thought worked out really well? Some great ideas of one-on-one conversations and expectations. I like that Robbie mentioned having some sort of larger meeting with more people to make sure that everybody is addressing the things they need to and not overlapping with what they're planning. That was a good one.
I think
Hearing new chair older members, I like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a really popular one that's getting a lot of response right now too.
And that's a great way to keep some of the older members involved that aren't in a position anymore, instead of just becoming a problem.
Yeah.
You can keep them involved. And they always like feeling like they know things that they can teach to other people and that they're needed. So that's a good thing.
For sure. All right. Well, moving ahead. Duke, I'll give Duke the credit here for Robbie's rules of order. He thought he was funny with making that joke. But you guys,
somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. As recording secretaries, this is your bread and butter. This is something that you guys should definitely know, have on hand, especially during chapter meetings, because this is going to make your chapter meetings as effective as possible. So we'll kind of just walk through step by step. This is on the website. It should be under our files tab as well. Yep, Robert's Rules cheat sheet. You know, you guys are probably all used to seeing it, so hopefully it won't take us too long to get through. But on the left, you'll see objectives. These are things that you want to get done, and to the right is the appropriate motion to make those things happen. So if you want to present an idea for consideration, you're making a main motion or resolution, and you have to consider the subject informally. If you're looking at regulating or cutting off debate, limit, or, you know, I make a motion to limit the debate to 5 minutes per person or a 10-minute total. I, you know, make a motion to extend this debate for another 10 minutes because we're having really great conversations. And that calls for an immediate vote. If you want to delay a decision or you refer to a committee, postpone definitely or indefinitely, it'll kill the motion automatically. Suppress a proposal, meet emergency, question of privilege, suspend rules, lay on the table. Duke, do you want to hit a couple of these too?
I was distracted by Nick's comment here, which is kind of from the last thing, but it's still good to address.
Yeah,
sorry.
sure.
But he's talking about kind of getting new members or potential TNMs involved as well. Yeah, definitely you could, especially when you have new guys, when you go through recruitment and you get your new pledges, if you can have them assigned to a committee in your chapter so they can start to learn about how the chapter works, it'll make them feel more included. So if you look at their past experiences, that could be a good way to figure out what might be a good fit for them. Leadership is definitely something. Hold on, how good. Yeah, starting with your new members is the best place to do that. Remind me where you left off.
That's totally fine. I've just kind of been hopping through the entire thing. Just they have this, they can read it. I don't want to take up too much of their time explaining every little detail of it, but
Yeah, and Robert's Rules of Order, you probably have heard about it at some point or had somebody mention it, and it's very in-depth and very detailed, and usually used in like military and like congressional practices. But this cheat sheet kind of gives you some of the key terms that you can use and take to your meetings, because as recording secretary, you're kind of the person that's running the meetings and making sure that you stay on time, that you stay on task, that people pay attention, you're not going too long, so that people are getting fed up of being there. So it's really just something you can look at to get some key takeaways. If you wanted to learn the whole in-depth Robert's Rules of Order, there are resources for that as well, but this is more just of a cheat sheet. And then the next slide, Robbie, you want to go to that? The next slide are kind of just some of the key terms of things that you would do. So adjourning a meeting, having a recess if you guys need to take a break, that's probably not going to happen too much. Point of information is always really useful. It's kind of like a polite way to just be like, hey, we already talked about this topic, or something along those lines. So just kind of knowing what that would look like to actually utilize it. Setting some sort of timeline on a debate. So if you're going to be voting on something, you want to make sure that there's a time that you're going to allot to that. So there are different motions that you can do to extend it or limit it.
Something on here that I want to draw attention to. So on the left, you have the motions. The big things is like interrupt, second, debatable, amendable, and voting. That's a really easy way, because some of these you can or can't interrupt. So like if someone's saying point of information, somebody can interrupt them if they chose to for something else. Same thing for reconsidering. But you'll notice most of these are no. Most of the time, once the chair recognizes you, i.e. the president or the recording secretary, whoever is running the meetings, they're going to be the ones who give you recognition, and you're going to be able to talk. Seconding things means that you have to have somebody second what you're saying. Debatable depends on some things like recess. Well, hey guys, we're almost done. Like, we don't really need to take a recess right now. Let's just finish this up. Cool, you can debate on it. A lot of these also say no, but you can also say yes to some of them. Amendable is stuff that means you can change it during or right after making it a thing. And then voting, majority, 50% plus one. The chair, so like point of information, orders of the day, that's the president or somebody on cabinet, whoever's running the meeting. Majority of 2/3. You guys should know what these are, but these are just important things to pay attention to. Sorry, Duke, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're good. And it's important for you to know it as the recording secretary and the person that's going to be running the meeting as well, but make sure that the general body knows it too. Because I remember when we first started our colony at Coastal, people like to pretend they knew what Robert's Rules of Order were, so they would just like yell out random terms and not really know how to properly use it. So making sure that you do some sort of refresher with your whole chapter or colony, if you all haven't done so before, just so you're on the same page and people are using it the right way, or it's going to make the meeting longer, which is the exact opposite of what you're trying to accomplish here. And then I think the next slide that Robbie will go to kind of has some of our key takeaways from Robert's Rules. No, you're good. Again, go more in depth and look at the resources that are available when it comes to it. So why do you think why we think this could be useful? It can help guide your discussion so they're not taking so long. How many times have you been in a chapter meeting where you're discussing some random topic and you're like, why are we wasting our time doing this? So Robert's Rules of Order can help you speed those kind of things along. I remember one of the biggest pet peeves I had were like t-shirt discussions at a chapter. Those would go on for like 30 minutes and it would just drive me crazy. So topics that you shouldn't be really spending a lot of time on, you can make sure you're getting through those. And then ending pointless debates, kind of hit on that too. You can call for a vote if you want to make a decision. So if you're just kind of going back and forth over a topic and you're like, let's put this to a vote and actually make a decision here, that's something you can do using Robert's Rules of Order. A lot of times you'll find that the discussion that's happening does not really have something that's ready to be voted on. So it's kind of just wasting time. So it's just a way of pointing that out. a new idea. If somebody just comes up with an idea off the top of their head and they want to have a big discussion about it, that's not really what chapter meeting's for. You're supposed to have those conversations beforehand and come in with your suggestion or item you want to be voted on, so it can help you avoid that kind of stuff as well. What did Austin have here?
It's a group me for the recording.
Well, Rec Sec group me? Cool. Good job, Austin.
Awesome.
But anybody, does your chapter utilize Robert's Rules of Order? Have you never heard of it before? Do you think that it's useful? Jack, are you saying heck yeah to being useful or to the group me?
Knowing Jack, he's probably saying heck yeah to both.
I'm sure he is. Definitely useful. Okay. So you all utilize it.
They're
Using useful, Timmy. Cool. Jack, yeah. Is that a winky face?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this information available on figam.org? Yeah. So it's under our files tab right now, Robert's Rules cheat sheet, and it's also on the website under undergraduates and under one of the tabs there.
Yeah, and if you haven't like ever explored the website and looked at all the resources available, there are a ton that a lot of people just don't realize. We've gathered them all in the files tab here where you're already at to make it a little bit more useful for the topics we're hitting on. But you'll find some great stuff in there if you just look at the web.
Always hit up your field secretary. We have access to these documents already. I have them saved on my computer for myself, but we also can typically show you exactly where it is on the website as well. So moving ahead, talk about meeting agendas. This is a huge thing, especially for you guys as recording secretaries. You should always have your meeting agenda ahead of time. You definitely don't want to create this like 5 seconds before the meeting. Obviously, some things might get added 5 seconds before, but you want to have this outlined way ahead of time. The easiest way to do it, call to order, the doxology, which you guys all should know, taking it of attendance, reading of your last meeting's minutes. You go report of the officers, reports of your committee chairman, old business, new business, fraternity information, RNCs, and adjournment. Big couple things that I like to just touch in here. Reports to officers, that should go from historian up to president. And I encourage chapters to do the same thing with reports to committee chairman. Let your historians chairman go, and then so on and so forth. But there's no real specific standard of what exactly you have to do. I know some chapters who do that. I know chapters who just go in order alphabetically. It's kind of weird, but that's something that you guys can do. Old business is anything that you've tabled from the previous meeting or that has been talked about before. New business is all that new stuff that you need to talk about this meeting. Fraternity information could be a slew of things, honestly. It can be stuff that's, hey guys, I have an art show coming up. Love to see everybody there. Hey guys, don't forget we have that sorority mixer this Friday night. Hey guys, Saturday morning, we're gonna go pick up trash around campus, meet here. So on and so forth. RNCs, remarks and criticisms. If you guys don't do this as a chapter, you're really missing out. The big thing with RNCs is just to remember that you're talking to the chapter as a whole. You're not singling people out. You're not individualizing it. You're just talking about what went good, what could have improved based on that meeting. Hey guys, I really loved all the great quality conversations we had. My criticism could be, I really wish that some of our side conversations didn't take as long and take away from the meeting. And then adjourning is you're done. Another thing I like to touch on with this is in response to new members. I am a big fan of having new members come to informal chapter meetings. They cannot go to formal chapter meetings because of ritual. Any other chapter meeting, they should definitely be able to come to. I'm kind of radical. I think they should be all the way through. Obviously, if you're talking about something specific about the new members or things that you don't want the new members to know about, have them leave after old business. Let them do their RNCs and let them leave, and then go into new business afterwards. But they should be there through the entire way. And exactly, James, great way for new members to get to know the chapter, because that's a huge thing. I'm gonna step up on my soapbox and I'll get right off so Duke doesn't yell at me too much for it. But with new members, these guys are going to be your brothers anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks for the most part. Some of you might go a little bit longer, but obviously no more than 12 weeks. You want to make them the best possible brothers they can be. And if you deny them the ability to come to chapter and their first chapter meeting after they become brothers, they're not going to know what the heck they're doing. Have them do this now. Get them used to being in chapter. Get them used to the accountability of showing up to chapter meetings. And that way they're the best brothers possible at the end of their weeks. And I'm getting off my soapbox. Duke, anything to add in meeting agenda before we hop into meeting minutes?
No, just to kind of hit on what a lot of guys are saying in the chat here about RNCs. I am always a big proponent of RNCs. Like Robbie said, it's a great way to communicate and address issues, tensions, positive things that are going on in the chapter. Really stressing the fraternity information versus the RNCs. I'm pointing at my screen like that would make a difference. Fraternity information and RNCs. So kind of knowing what is what. So an RNC is not like, it was so fun this weekend. Me and Craig hung out and we had a bunch of Bud Light. Like that's not what RNCs are for, or fraternity information. So kind of making sure that you're utilizing them effectively and letting brothers know of things or events during fraternity information, and then RNCs are when you're wanting to specifically address a remark or a criticism. I know sometimes it's fun to have those funny stories during RNCs as well, but it's supposed to be a more serious and respected aspect of the meeting.
Awesome. So jumping into proper meeting minutes, you guys are going to notice something. It's going to follow pretty much exactly what I just talked about. And there's a reason for it. Cool. You should definitely work through it. Your top of the page, make it very simple. Date, what time you started the meeting, who was in charge of the meeting. President is usually the person who's going to be that, but maybe the president is not there that night and the treasurer takes over or someone else is. The location of your meeting, what time the meeting ended, and the secretary is just who's taking the meeting minutes. Typically, that's going to be you guys as recording secretaries. You'll go through the roll call. You'll write down and have excused absences. I should say excused, not excuses. And then unexcused absences, which we'll talk about here in the next couple of slides. And then reading of minutes from the last meeting. That's just, hey, here's some quick points from our last meeting. If you guys weren't here, if you need a refresher, this is what we discussed. And I'll let Duke talk about still working on these meeting minutes.
Yeah, so meeting minutes, I mean, when you hear RecSec, that's kind of what most people think your main responsibility is. It's a huge part of your job. There are other aspects which hopefully you've realized throughout the day, but just making sure that you kind of have detailed descriptions of what the chapter officers and committee reports look like, old business, new business. So you got to keep track of those so that for the next meeting, you can have old business to discuss. Information for the good of the order. That's the same thing as the fraternity information. I think the book calls it a little bit different. RNCs, I don't think you'd really keep track of much of those unless there was something that wasn't too personal that you could work into there. And then adjournment, pretty self-explanatory, but meeting minutes, it's a record of your chapter or your colony, so it's important to have, and it's useful to have to look back at if something comes up or somebody says they're going to do something they didn't. You kind of have, you got the receipts. You are the receipt man.
And so two things I'll touch on real quick. The reports to chapter officers and reports to committees, if you'll notice, like I'll go back to the previous slide too, like what we're doing. A lot of this is like stuff that you should be pre-filling out. Like the top of the page, that's all stuff that you can do before the start of the meeting. Your excused absences, you're already going to know ahead of the meeting. Your meetings from the last minute, you already have. Reports of officers and committees, that should be stuff that's submitted to you at least 24 hours in advance of your meeting. Your old business, you already know what's going to go there. You already know what's going to go in your new business. A lot of this will happen before the meeting even starts, and you just got to fill in the blanks, which makes it really easy. Another thing I want to just point out, Andrew tossed in the chat, we have senior points of wisdom too. I've definitely heard of that. Those can be really beneficial. Definitely just make sure that they are actual points of wisdom, not something that gives guys a platform to kind of just be silly. Yeah, making an Excel sheet to calculate and keep track of attendance for all brothers throughout the semester is a great tool. Absolutely. Do you guys know how you can take attendance on Zoom automatically or something? I don't believe there's a way on Zoom outside of like looking at the participants list. And honestly, like as it might be easy just to have it written down as guys join. It also depends on what your definition of attendance is. I know some chapters that if you show up and you leave partway through the meeting and it's not an excuse, you don't get to be counted for that meeting. Some guys, do attendance at the beginning and then at the end, and the rec sec is sitting there through the entire meeting, just keeping track of who's there and who's not. So it's kind of ultimately what you guys are talking about. But jumping into do's and don't, sorry, dude, go ahead.
Just one thing I was going to say, and the perk of if you're doing Zoom meetings or chapter meetings, it's a way for, if you're recording them, you can go back and that makes your job a lot easier to take attendance and to take your meeting minutes, because you could just go back and watch. So that's a perk of using Zoom.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can talk about do's and don'ts.
Yeah, Jack, I mean, man, you're killing the game as always, but I know you pretty much built that website by hand. That's a really good thing for uploading your minutes. The big thing is just getting your minutes to your brothers, which we'll talk about right here. So excused versus unexcused absences. Make sure that you have something in your bylaws that state what an excused and unexcused absence is and what kind of accountability measures there are for it. Make it very clear standards of what's okay and what's not. And then what are the consequences for the unexcused absences? Do they go to JBoard? Is it a fine? Is it automatic? Is it something automatic, or is it something that you can have a discussion on? Make sure people will want to read your meeting minutes. Make it very easily understood. It should be useful for those in attendance and for those who aren't. Maybe I have an excused absence of why I'm not at chapter. I want to be able to read through them decently quickly to understand what happened. And then sending out your minutes on a weekly basis. Email it to all brothers, follow up on any questions, make sure to copy graduate leadership. There's different ways of doing that. It could be an email. It could be uploaded to the Google Drive that everyone has access to. It could be, like Jack says, if you guys are fancy and have it on the website where grads can automatically go in and see it. Whatever's best for you guys, just make sure that everybody in the chapter has access to it. And these meeting minutes should be sent out within a few days of finishing that chapter meeting, because you guys should have it done within 2 to 3 days later. Any questions on the do's and don'ts of meeting minutes? Do you want to touch on assessments and accreditation programs?
Yeah, so usually a campus will have some sort of accreditation or program that you have to fill out on a yearly basis. It's kind of similar to like an awards application with the fraternity, but more specific to your university. We don't know what it looks like at your specific university, so that's something to look into and figure out what exactly it looks like. But just some general things as recording secretary and being the person that's keeping minutes and keeping track of the different events that are happening. It's really going to come in handy when you have to fill those kind of things out, because they're usually looking for specific information, specific events. And if you have the meeting minutes or you have some sort of notes that you took about the event that happened, it's going to come in useful when you have to apply for those things. I think by this point, every school has some sort of accreditation or assessment program that they are asking you to do on a yearly basis. And if you are unable to do that, depending on your institution, they could take some sort of action against you. We've lost chapters because they're continually not meeting accreditation standards of the university. So it's very important that you stay on top of those kind of things, and you in your position, you're able to make sure that you have the documentation that you need to submit for those different topics. I think that's the general idea of what it's talking about there. Does any schools have, your school has an accreditation committee or accreditation program that you all have to do on a yearly basis, and you've been involved with it in some capacity? Facebook. People still use Facebook?
Yeah, most chapters that I've seen utilizing Facebook is mainly for their grads,
That's good.
and that most people have a Facebook.
I feel like the Gen Zers. Do you guys have Facebook? Facebook is good for. Oh, okay. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, we use Facebook, not on Facebook. Nope. Get a mixed bag over here.
Yeah, well, there was an undergraduate earlier that had asked a question about the Parliament for the foundation, and I looked him up on Facebook because that's just what I do as a millennial, and he was there. I was shocked. Had like a picture and everything.
Solely because of the Fiji page. Yeah, we have a grad Facebook page. Yeah. Well.
Oh yeah, that's a useful tool.
So kind of our last slide, I'm pretty positive. Final questions and our thoughts. What questions remain for you guys? What haven't we covered that you guys want to go about or have any further discussions that are needed? And don't forget, this isn't the only time you can talk to at least me. You can shoot me a private message on this forum. You can get my email from the website. You can contact your field secretary. They all have my info and they know to give it out to anybody who asks. Some of you guys are probably in my chapters, and I'll see you here in the next couple of weeks to do our opening cabinet meetings, which I look forward to. But drop it in the chat. Let me know what do we got left. Or maybe they're just tired of listening to me talk. That can work too.
Yeah, they really got shafted there with me not being able to log in. You could ask me questions afterward too if you want. There's like the conversation tab at the top where you can send like direct messages. Use that with one another to share ideas. If you saw somebody say something you want to follow up on, utilize that.
Is there a way to access the session after the academy? Yeah, I believe that the recordings are going to be available. And I also have our all the PowerPoints, sorry, I couldn't find the word, that we used today. So if you guys ever need anything for that as well, that's something that you can just shoot me or Duke an email and we can give you the access to that PowerPoint. And then I guess to close it out, make it real fun. It's quiz time. Were you guys paying attention to us or were we just kind of hanging out? I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Duke start sharing his if he's ready.
I'm about to be, but just to kind of preface it, so we're going to use Kahoot, which hopefully you've used at some point. The quiz is just for fun, so I know there's like 90 of you, so it's going to look really weird as you're all answering, but this is just a way to kind of recap and cover some of the useful information. So if you have not used Kahoot before, I'm going to pull it up, and it's going to give you a game pin, and you're going to go to a website and type it in. So you probably have your phone. You've probably been using your phone. Who can start sharing? Okay, so let me know if you can see this. Robbie, can you see it?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay. So this is going to be...
Thanks, Thomas.
Does it have the weird box up? Okay, so if you go to www.kahoot.it and then you're going to put in this game code. We're starting to get some people pop up, so we'll give it a little bit of time. Thank you all for picking normal names. There's an option where it just gives you a PC, like, funny name. But I was like, no, these guys, we can trust them. They're our rec secs. They know how important this is. Okay, sorry, Andrew. You're not going to be able to get on. Nice. Wow, somebody threw up their Greek letters up there? Okay. You download that extra keyboard. I see you.
No worries, Andy.
Okay, we'll give it like 30, or not, like 15 more seconds because I think we're getting close to the overall. I don't know. Is there like a max? Maybe we hit the max. Nope. We got Joel. Hey, Joel. Welcome. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you didn't make it, you could still just participate by watching. So were you paying attention? Number 1. What is your position called again? Are you the Core Sec, Rec Sec, Intramurals Chairman, Field Secretary? This one's only 10 seconds, so you gotta be quick. Ooh, we missed 2 people. All right, so some of you got that wrong, which is concerning. Unless you are a Core Sec, then you just sat through the whole wrong session. Moving on to the next question. True or false? You are the keeper of the bylaws. Did we say that that's something that you would normally be involved with? We're really close there. Who is the quickest? Mason, you were just ready. Should you follow laws? Yes? No?
These are great questions, Duke.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan. Wow. All yes.
Oh, Mason. Mason's not about laws.
The Ohio State.
Should members bimbo each other money to buy alcohol? I wonder who said yes. All right, we got a new leader on that one. There are some that are actually hard, just FYI. When voting to extend a bid, how many votes are needed? So if you have your quorum, do you need a majority, 100%, 3/4, or you just need that head nod from the cool kid in the back? He's like, yeah, this guy, give him a bid. I think we're missing one person. There we go. All right. Ooh, that one actually tripped some people up. Check them bylaws out, boys. You thought they were all going to be easy, too. What's the minimum college GPA required to be initiated? College GPA, 2.25, 3.0, 2.5, 2.75. All right. Most of you got it. Mateo kept his lead. Good job. How often should you be holding a formal chapter meeting? So that's the one that has the ritual component. Once a month, every week, once a year, once a semester. I know some of your chapters probably think that it's once a year. Yep, should be doing them once a month. And for RecSec, it's easier for you all because there's more structure. Which of these is not a duty of your office? Taking minutes, assisting with the voting procedure, know you're part of the ritual, or communicate with graduate brothers? For those 2 guys that thought they were Core Sec, they might be picking the last option. All right. Mateo kept his lead. Somebody's got to take them. Which of these is not a committee that you would normally oversee? So the suggested ones. Recruitment, scholarship, grad relations, risk management. Okay. Mateo's still there. True or false? you should send meeting minutes to graduate leaders. So your PL, your BCA chairman. Your meeting minutes should not have anything that they shouldn't be able to see, but just in case. All right. Some of you don't want to do that. Oh. What can be used to keep meetings under control? Don't have the meetings. Don't invite your seniors. Robert's Rules of Order or trial by combat. Some of these could probably do it, but what did we tell you would do it?
Oh man.
What?
Just some of these answers, man. These are great.
I was real slap happy this morning when I made this. All right, James, you kept your lead there. Which of these is not a topic for remarks and criticisms? Addressing concerns about an issue, providing critique about a meeting, pointing out something positive from a meeting, talking about how lit this past weekend was. I think that's Ben Bernanke. I don't know why he was the first thing that popped up when I typed in speaker, but be the chairman of the Fed. Okay, all right. Most of you got it. James, you might be coming in clutch at the end here. There's only a couple left. All right, so for this one, it's going to be a little confusing. So you're going to put these in order by what the priorities of our, as a member of Phi Gamma Delta are. The last one's other. So just, I had to do 4 options, but between fraternity, self, and scholarship, what order do those go in of priority? You should have learned this in your Purple Pilgrim. I just wanted to use this function. That's why this question's here. It has nothing to do with our track. But see how well you guys know your stuff. Okay. All right. Pretty good. Pretty good. James. All right. Do you think you got anything out of this training? No points allotted with this, just to know.
I
learned a lot.
really hope for a positive answer. That would be really sad if
it was
it's
okay.
a lot of green.
I would click green if I could, but
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Crush my spirit.
Let's hope for the best here. Oh, hey, lots of red, no green.
0.
Thank you, guys.
Let's go.
And the last question, it's multiple answer. Who do you think was a cooler baby? Red baby or blue baby?
Hey, if you don't pick blue baby, I'm gonna come for you, man. Sorry.
Who is the cooler baby? You have to pick 2 answers because I didn't want Robbie to feel bad when you all picked me over him.
Wow. I hope they all pick me. Dang.
Ooh,
Haters.
Red won that. Who is that, baby?
Haters.
Horrible. Yeah, send me an email and I'll find something to send you.
Cool.
You got to prove who you are, though.
Guys, I really appreciate all the activeness in the chat and everyone talking and helping us out with this. It's been a real interesting time. Make sure that you guys hop over to the closing session, which begins in 2 minutes. So be sure to hop over there. Cool. Duke, any
Thank
last
you all.
remarks?
No, use the resources that are in the files tab. Thank you guys for participating. This has been kind of a weird thing for Robbie and I to try to make it so we can communicate with one another, only having the text feature. So thanks for utilizing that. Touch base with these guys, utilize that GroupMe. You all are going to be doing the same position at different schools, but same thing. You're going to be going through a similar experience. So share ideas. That's probably the biggest takeaway you can get from the Academy overall, is just getting ideas from your fellow undergraduate brothers. So make sure you're taking advantage of those.
Awesome. Thanks,
We
guys.
appreciate
Again.
your time.
Have a good rest of your day. See you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.